Check Podcasts.
Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Chamber Chats, coming to you as always from right here in the podcasting studios at the Czech Media Group, one of our chamber champions. I'd like to begin as always by acknowledging that I live and work in the lands of the Lekwungen-speaking nations, known to us today as Songhees and Coosapsum. And all of this is made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, who are changing what banking can do for people, for community, and for planet. People are always remarking on the fact that Victoria is actually not just Victoria, it's 13 municipalities. But as we always say, we might be 13 municipalities, but we're just one economy. Across Vancouver Island, we could say the same thing. We are multiple communities, of course, and multiple nations, but we are just one economy. And integral to that economy are the chambers of commerce. There are over 20 of them on Vancouver Island, and taking a look at what those chambers say and do about where they are tells us the story of the economy on Vancouver Island, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to kind of draw a line straight across Vancouver Island. We're going to begin with Erin Udall, who is the Executive Director of the Gabriola Island Chamber of Commerce. Erin, how are you?
Hi, Bruce. I'm great today. We have a beautiful day on Gabriola Island.
Every day is a beautiful day on Gabriola Island. Let's go a little further west. We'll go into the Alberni Valley. Jolene Dick is with us today. She is the CEO of the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce. Jolene, how are you?
I'm great. Wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
You bet. And as far west as you can go, of course, is the west coast of the island. And with us today is Samantha Hackett, who is the Executive Director of the Tofino Chamber of Commerce. Samantha, how are you?
Good, thanks, Bruce. Thanks for having me. And I'm coming from Tloquit territory here in Tofino.
Thank you. Let's say you meet somebody for the first time and they say, "Where are you from?" You say, "Oh, I'm from Tofino." And they say, "Really? What's Tofino like? Tell me about it." How do you answer that?
Usually people have heard of Tofino in one way or another, whether they've been here or just heard about it in some sort of way. So usually they actually have something in mind, whether they're thinking about surfing or beaches or the rainforest. So usually it's a bit of an education of that Tofino is more than just the one thing that they know of Tofino. So surfing we end up being known for, but usually our visitors are coming for something else. The rainforest, the nature experience, our beautiful culinary scene. And so, really just talking about all of the other things that happen here in Tofino.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a second. CBC Radio did something a little while ago, and I think they did a survey across country with Rick Mercer, and people said that the number one place they wanted to visit in Canada was Tofino.
Yes, that is true. Right now, we are number one in a lot of different charts. Expedia just said that Tofino was the number one searched destination in all of Canada.
Wow, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Just for perspective, every time I go to Tofino, I fly a kite on the beach. That's what I do. We've all got our own thing to do. Jolene, the beautiful Alberni Valley. How would you describe that to someone when they say, "Gee, I've never been there. What's it like?" What's your answer?
My answer is usually, have you been to Tofino? And then usually the answer is yes. And so I educate the people that they have indeed been to the Alberni Valley and Port Alberni. Port Alberni, I guess, is a hidden gem in development for tourism and is really underestimated. We have beautiful trails to come and visit, but we're also a port city, even though we're really far inland. We're the home to many people, but home to the Hupuchas and Sashot First Nations. And there's endless mountains, endless rivers and lakes. And we have BC's best lake, Sprout Lake, and we have lots of fishing.
Yeah, you come up the inlet. It's just a spectacular trip to take by boat. And Erin, you're kind of an island next to an island. Gabriola Island is a place I've actually spent a lot of time there. So when people say, "Gee, I've never been to Gabriola, what's it like?" What's your answer?
Gabriola Island is really about both the arts and culture. People come alive with being inspired by both the natural setting and the people that live there. We're known as the Isle of the Arts, so lots of culture there. And then there's also a lot of health and wellness on Gabriola as well, and lots of opportunities for people to relax and just take a pause. I would say that's why people visit Gabriola.
Yeah, and you grew up there actually too. That's your born and raised there.
Yeah, very lucky.
So I'm going to stick with you for just a minute, Erin. So tell me a bit more about the economy itself. People do think of the arts and that healing stuff, but what else is involved in the economy on Gabriola Island?
Well, tourism is a really integral part of Gabriola's economy at the moment, and it has been that way for a long time. I always say there's kind of a heartbeat to the island throughout the year. So we have kind of a busy summer season, and then we have kind of a quieter pause in the winter. And it's really nice to actually visit in the spring and fall because you have those off-season times when it's a little bit quieter. But the beaches and landscape is still a wonderful place to engage with.
Yeah, I mean, for the locals too, there's grocery stores and there's hardware stores and lumber shops and stuff like that for sure. Jolene, Alberni was known for a long time as a mill town, but there's more to your economy now. Tell me about that.
Yes, we're still very much a mill town and a forestry town. We have some amazing companies and partnerships where there's some value added wood products here. I think of the First Nations and their partnerships that they have here. Although Port Alberni is home to Hupuchesa and Sasha, we have the Monmouth Treaty Nations that are also in the vicinity that have their own group of businesses and their own economic development. But we also rely on fishing. Fishing season has started. The sockeye salmon are starting to come up the Alberni Inlet and through the Somas River system. And then we are transitioning to tourism. So that's still a growing sector, but it's very much alive. And we're really excited to develop that with Alberni Valley Tourism.
Yeah, it's funny that Port Alberni, right on the sign, says the salmon capital, and then when you go to Campbell River, it also says the salmon capital. But it's a different. You're talking about sport fishing, right?
Yes, sport fishing, but there's also the economic opportunity through the First Nations, which is a major contributor to the economy in the summer. But yes, we are definitely the salmon capital of the world. We win a lot of good contests. So we actually won the Canada's Ultimate Fishing Town contest. So we have that sign as well. So we have many badges to be the salmon capital of the world.
And here it is, all right at our doorstep for sure. So Samantha, yes, the surf culture is big in Tofino, and we know the arts is big. But tell me about some other elements of the economy in Tofino.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing with our tourism economy is that there's multiple parts within that tourism economy, that we're not just one tourism economy. So whether people are coming, the culinary scene is actually one of our biggest reasons that people will visit a second, third, 10th time is because of the amazing culinary opportunities in all of the whole West Coast area. So throughout Ucluelet as well as Tofino. And surf actually, even though it's very apparent that we're the surf space of Canada, the best surf destination in Canada, it actually isn't one of the main reasons that visitors are coming. It's a very small population that come for surfing and enjoy surfing. It really is just to more enjoy the beaches. We have a lot of amazing hikes, the rainforest opportunities. Both of our Indigenous communities, Toloquit and Ahousaht, are doing a lot of tourism now and getting into different opportunities for people to visit or Indigenous tourism. So that's been a great and growing industry for us. And then you mentioned culture. So the arts and culture, also events is a big one. So we have a lot of different events throughout the year that people visit for, things like Whale Festival. We just had our big Wine and Dine Festival, so another culinary activity.
Yeah, and you again have services there for the folks that actually live there too, because there's plumbers and electricians and hardware store and the co-op store and all that stuff. So you've got that part of
Yes.
the economy too. Okay, there is something unique about each of these three places, but there's other things they all have in common, as we all do on Vancouver Island. We're going to talk more about that next. Chamber Chats today. We're talking with some of my colleagues from other chambers across Vancouver Island. Samantha Hackett in Tofino, Jolene Dick is in Alberni, and Aaron Udall is on beautiful Gabriola Island. Let's pick up on the tourism conversation again, Samantha. How has the season been so far this year?
It was something that we didn't think was going to be as strong as it has been. It's been a good start to the spring, a few bumps along the road, but with the tariff conversation happening and that affecting tourism in actually a positive way for our area, we've been seeing a lot more people stay local, and we've been seeing a lot of American travelers, which has been a nice new thing. I think since COVID, we haven't seen a lot of that American traveler in our area. So we're actually anticipating one of the busier summers that we've seen over the last few years, and we hope that that continues into the fall and into the winter.
Yeah, well, with Canadians traveling at home more than going south, I think that's going to be a factor for everybody. Aaron, tell me, I know that Gabriola's population virtually doubles during the summertime, but how is your tourism season looking so far this year?
It's looking great, which we're actually really relieved about. The last year was not so great on Gabriola. So businesses were really struggling, noticing the drop in tourism last year. And we've noticed a significant uptick in visitation on Gabriola this year. So accommodation sectors are already booked out for a lot of the season. And we're looking to fill those last spots and make sure that people have a wonderful time as they visit Gabriola.
Great. So, for perspective on this next question, we're recording this in the second week of June. As of today, there's a fire that started to burn near Sprout Lake, and that's impacting the skies a little bit. And wildfires impacted all of you in a certain way over the last year. Samantha, let's go to you first of all for this. The big Cameron Lake incident impacted travel to and from Tofino. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that was in 2023, so 2 years ago. It was at this time we would have been already road closed, and no travelers going to and from Tofino or Ucluelet or Port Alberni for that matter. And that was a huge thing that we obviously didn't anticipate, but also, really that ripple effect throughout not just the tourism economy, but then how that does affect some of our other economies, just like our grocery stores or, our supply chains. And so figuring out during those times and now over the last 2 years of how we can make sure that those things don't drastically affect us the way that they did, other transportation opportunities from that.
And that same thing, Jolene, impacted you because that fire incident happened between Port Alberni and Parksville. So that impacted you too. Tell me about that.
Yes, I was 2 months into my role here
Oh,
with
fun,
the
right?
chamber.
Yeah, here's a problem. Take care of this, would you?
So I was in a meeting that day, and I was aware that the fire started, and then the road closed temporarily in the morning, and then at 4 p.m. it was full closure. So our visitor center is right at the junction as you enter town, so we got to witness the traffic back up immediately. And so, as a team and as a visitor center, we had to try and figure out how long this closure was, and that was a mystery. But it was chaotic at the beginning. We closed for 2 weeks, and then we had alternating, lanes and scheduled closures for 2 months, which really impacted the residents here and residents on the other side of the closure as well, because they are commuting back and forth between Port Alberni and the other side of the island. So it was a huge disruption to our lives. We're still experiencing the impacts today. Today, Highway 4 is closed between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. because there's still debris coming from Cameron Bluffs mountainside. So there's a scheduled closure where no relief is done and no one can come through for for that 6 hour period.
Yeah. So, Aaron, I guess the fires themselves didn't directly impact you, but in general, uh, people who are travelers from other parts of the world are hearing about wildfires in BC and are not coming here for that reason. Have you seen any of that manifest on Gabriola?
We haven't seen it directly manifest on Gabriel, but it's something that both our residents and businesses are very aware of. If we had a fire on Gabriel, and our fire department often says it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of, at some point we'll all be affected by wildfire. Being prepared, making sure that people know what to do, and chambers and especially visitor centers are being asked to take a larger role in making sure there's better communication about emergency procedure, especially to the tourist facing businesses, because they will have people in those spaces that need some extra kinds of support in those instances.
So another factor here we're going to talk about is BC Ferries. Brings a lot of people to and from Vancouver Island. Of these three chambers, Gabriola is one that does have a ferry terminal. I want to talk about all of this in terms of ferries next. Chamber chats today. We're talking with some of my colleagues, rather, from other chambers on Vancouver Island. They are Samantha Hackett in Tofino, Jolene Dick in Port Alberni, and Aaron Udall on Gabriola. And Aaron, as I mentioned, I lived at one time in Nanaimo, and I've lived in Nanoose Bay and spent some time on Gabriola. The Quinsam, the ferry that goes back and forth, that's like a cultural thing, right? These are neighbors traveling back and forth every day, going to work, going to school. Tell me about the culture around that little ferry.
Yeah, we actually had a ferry upgrade a couple of years ago, so now we have 2, which was really big news at the time. And, I grew up on Gabriola and had to go to Nanaimo for high school, so I'm intimately aware of taking the ferry on a daily basis, and it's a really, a bonding experience for residents to be on the ferry together. It's a very social time often, but it is full of logistical, uncertainty at other moments and can be a difficulty for businesses at certain moments. So we are very aware when we have very logistical issues and try to support our businesses as much as possible with those.
Yeah, it's part of the charm of living on the island, though, right? It kind of it kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Samantha and Jolene. Jolene, I'll start with you. When the ferries were having some difficulties with mechanical issues, and they had staffing issues a few years ago, and then they would go public with that and say, "We're not really sure if we're going to sail this weekend or not," or so, that impacted travel to Alberni, right?
Yes, yes, it did. It was a challenge mixed with the wildfires, of course. So we can always tell when the ferry schedule is happening because every hour and a half there's kind of a rush in Port Alberni here at the visitor center and at all our local shops and cafes. There's suddenly a flood, but it definitely impacts the reliability and reputation of coming to Vancouver Island. And the accessibility. Now we have to tell people make a reservation to come. Like, please make sure you book there and back. So today we're having to make those calls to amend people's reservations due to the closures. So it's always kind of disruptive, but hopefully we can fix that problem and get some more vessels into the system.
Yeah, I mean, ferries is much more efficient than they were before, and they're working on new ferries too, as you know, so that'll help everybody. But Samantha, the hoteliers and the restaurant people during that time period when service was uncertain took a huge hit in Tofino, right?
Yes. Yeah. Any time that we have any disruption, whether it's a BC Ferries disruption, a wildfire, road, even just regular road maintenance, it's a huge disruption on our whole community. And it's something that reliability and also the diversification of our transportation opportunities. So looking at air travel, how can we make those opportunities more reliable, more options to, we have many airports on the island as well as a really reliable one in Tofino. And so looking at different modes of transportation, uh, ferries, although there's logistics, can there be more ferry opportunities to maybe Port Alberni directly to be able to access our area in another way, not just using a one road in, one road out situation?
And you got harbor air coming back and forth too, so there's that to look at as well. Okay, something else that all chambers, all municipalities, all companies are looking at right now, and Jolene, I'm going to go to you with this, is workers, workforce. How's that looking in Port Alberni? Does everybody have all the people they need?
I've done some checking around. I think it's still a challenge to recruit the right people. But I'm hearing some good news and positives from other business owners that they have selected the people that they need. Um, but I think it's with some of the seasonality, it's hard to retain some of the people, especially in well-paying jobs.
Okay. Samantha, what about Tofino? Has everybody got enough workers?
It's always been a struggle. We have a lot of transient positions, a lot of transient workers. Entry level positions usually tend to be the ones that are easier to fill. Where we struggle a lot is those middle management, the people that you're wanting to keep to be the trainers, the supervisors. How do you get long-term staff in those roles when we have such a transient workforce? We had huge problems during COVID when we weren't able to have foreign workers come in. So, even just the working holiday visas not being open at that time. There was a bit of a delay too, that took a few years for that to rebound. And so, we're just finally starting to really see that reliable workforce from our working holiday visas. And then, of course, we've taken a hit with the temporary foreign worker program and other immigration cutbacks on the federal government, and it's communities like Tofino that really end up taking the hit of that because that's where a lot of the workers are coming into. They're working for our resorts, our restaurants, and usually end up actually being our long-term employees. They're the ones that end up in supervisor roles and working their way up and staying long-term in our community.
Then on Gabriola, Aaron, you're looking at the fact that not everybody who lives on Gabriola works on Gabriola. and vice versa. So what's the labor situation like on Gabriola right now?
Yeah, it's really hard here. We did a tourism assets and business skills study in 2024 and found that the top priority and challenge for business owners is that they can't recruit and retain employees for tourism in the tourism industry specifically, and also food and beverage, because there's nowhere for these people to live. And business owners end up spending their time, on Facebook, on reaching out to people in the community. Just, do you have anywhere for these people to live and stay?
Yeah, housing and healthcare all connected to that same thing. Samantha, you're finding that in Tofino. I'm sure. I mean, you have a hospital, you have doctors there, but the housing for, I mean, there's properties now, resorts are building specific housing for their employees, right?
Yeah, that's been something for years that our businesses have had to build their own housing, which is not what our
It's
businesses
not their
are
core business.
experts on. No,
No.
that's not what they know how to run, and that isn't what they should be having to spend their time on. And the staff don't want to be living in a space that's run by their employer. They want that independence. They want their own space. And unfortunately, it's definitely over the years been moving the other way. We've actually had businesses purchasing homes within Tofino. So as we know, property prices everywhere are going up. It's only further being driven up by businesses having to buy homes to turn them into staff accommodations. And so, we have sort of two types of housing in Tofino. It's the unaffordable, the people that don't live in Tofino, or the people that want a second home, purchasing beautiful homes with a view. And then we have our housing that should be our, smaller families or entry level housing, and a lot of it is staff accommodation.
Yeah, and Jolene, for a long time, Port Alberni was considered one of the most affordable places to live on Vancouver Island, but you've still got the same challenges everybody else does, right?
Yes, yes, we do. Port Alberni is still quite affordable. Lots of people are discovering Port Alberni and moving here. I'm always surprised on who we will find here. I am hearing from some businesses that housing is a bit of a challenge. So, as Port Alberni develops its culinary scene, we have restaurateurs offering very, very delicious food, or on their way to, and they're trying to recruit. But I'm also hearing that housing for them is a challenge too.
Yeah. So, as much as we all live in distinctly different places across Vancouver Island, we all have things that we have in common, and much of that is being managed by the professionals that operate the chambers of commerce, like my friends that were guests today. Thank you for being here. Samantha is the executive director of the Tofino Chamber of Commerce. Sam, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and chatting about all these important issues.
And Aaron Udall is with the Gabriola Island Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for being here, Aaron. And Jolene Dick in Alberni Valley, thank you for being here as well.
Thank you, Bruce.
You bet. I'm Bruce Williams, like she said, and I will see you again for another Chamber Chat.